Redshift here, doing my part to shift perceptions out of the pink and into the red. Okay, so I'm going to be eating while I'm recording this, so hopefully y'all don't mind too much. I'll try to keep it from interfering with, my reading and stuff too much, but this is not the first time I've tried to record this video. I recorded a bunch of other videos, and some of those I fucked up on too, and I had to re-record those, so I'm pretty annoyed right now, a little bit. And so, yeah, I'm going to record this and hopefully it goes fine, but I don't really feel like starving myself anymore. So I'm just going to eat while I record this. Okay, so I want to talk about regulations and things like that. So that's what this video is going to be about. There might be some repetitiveness, hopefully not too much, but I'm going to be discussing it all in quite a bit of detail about why safety regulations and things like this are completely unneeded, and why under anarcho-capital, and especially government, enforcing those things, and why under anarcho-capitalism it'd be way, way better, because there would still be safety, but it'd be voluntary and entirely affordable. When people die in other countries from something not being safe there, such as, food or drink or something else like machinery falling apart and killing someone, or architecture collapsing, and people in the hotel or apartment dying from the building collapsing while they're in it, this kind of thing is always touted as a reason why we have strict regulations and why strict regulations are a good thing. But this is bullshit, because strict regulations could exist under anarcho-capitalism too. It just wouldn't be made by government. The regulation would not be made or enforced or certified or anything by government, right? And it would not be forced on anyone. There'd be regulation bodies that create, safety regulations, and if you want to get certified, you want to pay to get certified that you built your house according to those regulations, or whatever, you could do that, but you don't have to. And so that's freedom, right? When you don't have to do it. There's no reason to force, anybody to use a certain currency. There's no reason to force anybody to adhere to certain safety regulations. No reason for it at all, as I'm going to explain in this video. And if safety were such a big thing that almost everyone wanted, then almost everyone would drink and eat only at places that were approved by organizations that put out the regulations and that certified that things were done according to the regulations. But under anarcho-capitalism, there might be people who don't have such a safety-obsessed way of living, and they would use less safely built buildings, and they would drink drinks made by people, that's not certified or anything, or maybe it's just made in a factory that's not certified, but maybe the factory is just as safe, but it's not proven to be safe because it's not officially certified to be safe. So, people who drink vodka made by people by hand or by a factory that's not certified as safe, but it probably is safe anyway, they do all kinds of riskier things, right? And maybe that risk adds value to those people's lives, reminding them that they could die at any time and that life is not worth living and if one takes no risks. And it would make them appreciate life, and it would probably make them more virtuous people. People who think they're going to live forever act like monsters. But people who accept death act much more virtuously, on average. Not always, and it would definitely make them people who take things both less seriously and more seriously. They would take little daily frustrations less seriously, because such annoyances don't even compare to the possibility of death. And such people would take things like freedom much more seriously. The people who wanted safe stuff would use safe-approved stuff, and they'd have to pay a bit more for that extra measure of safety. And those who used things that were not approved as being safe would not have to pay as much, and would be compensated for their bravery by not having to pay as much. And the businesses that were approved would have to pay more to get certified, and would thus have to pass that cost along to the consumer, thus perhaps making it so that they got fewer customers. But the businesses that had a good reputation but did not want to pay to get certified and stay certified would be able to sell things at a lower cost, and would thus get more business and make more profit. Everybody benefits and everybody gets to do what they want to do. Sellers get to sell what they want to sell and do so at the price they want, and with the amount of hassle that they want to deal with. Like, they don't have to hassle with getting certified if they don't want to. And buyers get to buy what they want to buy at the lower price they want to buy, or at the higher level of safety that they want their product to have. As either you can buy a product at a lower price, but not certified to be safe, even though it probably actually is, or at a higher level of safety, it's certified to be safe, still not a 100% guarantee of safety, but a stronger guarantee of safety, and you're going to have to pay a little bit more for that, right? This is reason enough to have freedom. But if you need even more reasons, then look at the fact that the number of people who die because of collapsing buildings built without sufficient regulations, and the amount of people who die due to food poisoning because of insufficient regulations, and other numbers of people who die due to insufficient regulations of various kinds, the number has got to be tiny. I'll bet it doesn't even compare to the huge number of people who die each year because of America's wars. And you also have to factor in all the domestic violence caused by the poverty created by government. As well as the government's feminist propaganda getting women into the workforce, the government's high taxes that it places on the 99%, the government's overregulation driving otherwise profitable businesses out of business because it can't afford to pay to get cleared by the government's checkers to make sure that everything is up to code, etc. This whole question is like statism versus anarcho-capitalism, right? If you're going to have government, yeah, it might save a few lives with regulations, with safety regulations and whatnot, but you're also going to drive businesses out of business doing that. And you're going to make this, infantilized, super safe, childlike culture where everyone acts like a baby because everything's so safe and no one has any tolerance for even the slightest level of risk. And at the same time, even though you got this infantilized public, you got the government, on the other hand, killing millions of people in wars that are totally unnecessary. And you got this infantilized public just complaining about these tiny little safety dangers and inconveniences, while at the same time ignoring the genocide its own government is committing with its own tax dollars. So you want to have anarcho-capitalism where things will probably be still just as safe, if not far safer. And, some people, a few thousand or a few hundred or maybe a few tens of thousands will die every year from taking risks, voluntarily taking risks by buying uncertified products that prove dangerous. And if people die, they collapse in an elevator, they die in an elevator collapse or an escalator collapse or, whatever else. They die of food poisoning or the alcohol was not properly distilled enough, and so they go blind or whatever, Sure, that shit's going to happen under anarcho-capitalism, but those people knowingly took that risk by buying an uncertified product. So, who cares? And number two, do you really want to have government killing millions of people, but saving like a few hundred or a few thousand lives every year from regulations? Or do you want to have anarcho-capitalism where there's no war, and millions of lives are being saved, but you lose a few thousand lives every year too? Food poisoning and collapsing buildings and stuff like that. I mean, seriously, which one is worse? Endless war, which kills millions of innocent people, or, not having regulations, just killing a few thousand every year? Obviously, it's better to have anarcho-capitalism. I mean, it blows my mind that more people don't talk about this stuff. But anyway, I hope you understand now, and I'm going to continue talking about this, in the rest of this video, but, it should already be obvious to you why anarcho-capitalism is better and why statism is fucking retarded and psychotic. Governments start all the wars. It's not like the people start the wars. The governments start all the wars, and they drag the people into war whether they want to or not. And the people have no say in whether we go to war either, because all the wars are undeclared now. You can have government and war, or you can have no government and a few thousand deaths from, no regulations. But people stupidly and hypocritically want to act like, we have to have regulations or else people will die. This is retarded. This is childish. This is fucking moronic beyond any level of which I can even properly articulate. Government acts like it wants to save lives, and that's why it has regulations. But this is bullshit. If those reasons were valid, then the government would outlaw alcohol and cigarettes, both of which individually kill astronomical numbers of Americans alone, but which together kill an unimaginably huge number of Americans each year. Government doesn't care about your life. If it did, it would outlaw alcohol and cigarettes. It doesn't care about your life, and it never did, and it never will. And even if government did care about your life, 100 years ago, it sure as hell doesn't now. It's all about the money. More regulation means the government making more money from people paying the government to say that everything is up to code, and more regulation means more control of the people, so the government's power is even greater. And if you say the government only lets alcohol be legal because alcohol was illegal at one point, never even broke the law anyway, and the black market and the organized crime that provided the alcohol was getting bigger and bigger, well, that's also a great reason why we should totally abolish government. It's also a good reason why marijuana and other drugs should be legal, right? If you want to use that argument, well then by that argument you should legalize all drugs. But the government insists on keeping marijuana illegal just because the unions of cops and unions of prison guards all want marijuana to stay illegal so that the number of people in prison stays high, so that those prison guards and cops don't lose their jobs. If marijuana were made legal, a lot of prison guards would lose their jobs. So they want people in prison merely so that they don't lose their jobs. That is fucked up. That is slavery. People need to wake up to the fact the regulations are not for their safety. And also that things would be just as safe if we had regulations being done by corporations, which are voluntarily adhered to by as many or as few businesses as wanted to provide those certified regulation adherent products. That is, they'd adhere to, as many companies would adhere to those regulations as wanted to, right? As wanted to sell only certified products or whatever. And if they didn't want to, everyone would know it, and then they wouldn't have to. We do not need to infringe on freedom in order to get more safety. The free market can do it better, and the free market allows people to retain their freedom. Unlike when you turn something over to the government, which results in everyone losing their freedom, and everyone losing prosperity, and the government gaining more wealth and power and control and ability to be tyrannical, a power which it always exercises. And when it doesn't exercise a power to increase its tyranny, the reason is only because it fears the backlash of the people. People who are well armed because of the Founding Fathers' great wisdom in providing us with the Second Amendment. And by the way, this power, this tyrannical power that the government always exercises as much as it possibly can get away with doing, this power is always exercised in a stupid, inefficient, destructive way. Yeah, sure, the government does, things like, fund scientific development and stuff, but that can be done by the free market way more efficiently. And then you wouldn't have the tax dollars, of the people paying for it, and then the corporations benefiting from it. Instead, you'd have the private corporations paying for the R&D, and the private corporations benefiting from the R&D, which is how it should be. For the corporation to benefit for R&D done by the government with the people's as tax dollars, and the people don't get any benefit out of that, that is fucking crazy. That is tyranny, that is theft, that is insane. Right? Like, risk and reward should go together. Just like authority and responsibility should go together. Power and responsibility should go together, just like TFM says. Same thing here, right? Risk and reward should go together too. And when there's no government, that means that the businesses which are not viable now would be viable under anarcho-capitalism because there being no taxes and no cost of adhering to regulations that maybe the business chooses to not adhere to, or which maybe the business does choose to adhere to but cannot afford to, or maybe the business would want to adhere to regulations that are voluntary under anarcho-capitalism but cannot afford to pay or to have it, officially certified or to follow those regulations. Maybe those regulations require like an upgrade in machinery or something, but the company can't afford to do that, right? So it can't afford to follow the regulations. Or maybe the company can afford to follow the regulations, but can't afford to pay the extra to have it certified that they're following the regulations, right? Women being out of the workforce, and probably 95% or more of women who choose to marry and have kids and choose not to work, probably 98 or 99% or more. Women being out of the workforce would mean the men would be making twice as much money, which would mean the men would have much more money in savings, which would mean the men would have more startup capital for starting a new business, which means more entrepreneurialism, more jobs for other men, etc. And this would mean more wealth as well, and it would also mean more innovation and more technological progress. No requirement to adhere to regulations means that poorer people could start businesses easier, thus providing more poor people with a path forward, a way to gain wealth, a way to start to gain wealth. No taxes means that you can more quickly hire people smarter than yourself to work for you and advance your business much quicker than you'd be able to do on your own because you maybe only have an average or below average IQ. So you start this business and it's rolling well, but it's taking you a long time to get it going, getting really big really quick because you don't have a really high IQ or great memory. So it's a great idea and you've worked really hard and you've been growing the business, but not as fast as like high IQ people could do, right? So then you hire a few high IQ employees. Maybe when they're in high school, maybe when they're in the first or second year of college, you get them to drop out and work for you, right? And you say, hey, I'll give you 10% of this business. You're really smart. Work for me and work with me and you'll have 10%. I'll pay you a wage and you'll get 10% of the business. So you'll get 10% of the profits. And so, if you help me grow this business huge, which I know it can, if we do it right and I hire enough smart people, then, this business will be able to bring in a huge amount of money, and then you'll get really rich because you own 10% of it, right? So, these people are maybe in high school. Who knows? Maybe they're really geniuses, and they're only in junior high, and you grab them early, right? And then you don't even have to pay them much, right? Instead of going to school, or whatever, they'd be happy to get paid this little wage. They're maybe 14, 15 years old, but they're like 180 IQ or 160 IQ or 150, so they're really smart. Maybe you could just have them work for you part-time, right? Do the high IQ stuff that you can't do yourself, right? So this could, you could grab them really early, get them working for you, give them a percentage of the business, tell them that if they work for you full-time, you'll give them an even bigger percentage of the business. Maybe they're 15 years old and they're really, really smart, but they're still doing school or other things. And you're like, hey, I'll give you 2 or 3% of the business if you work for me part-time and you do the high IQ stuff that I can't do myself to expand this business, right? And then they start working for you, they help you and stuff. They're working, and then you're like, dude, I'll give you another 7 or 8%. I'll get you up to 10%. You'll own 10% of the profits of this business if you come and work for me permanently and you make this your career. And then the kid's maybe like, a year or two later, he's 16, 17, 18. He's like, do I really want to go to school for another 4 to 8 years just so I can get a degree, just so I can hopefully get a job in a corporation to where I can start to work my way up or start my own business? This guy already started his own business. It's already starting to do pretty decent. He needs my help. He's already willing to give me 10% of the profits of this business. I know that I could help make this business huge. And then I'll have 10% of this huge corporation. It's worth a ton of money. I could make this $1 billion corporation. Or at least $100 million corporation. Then I'll have 10 million bucks, right? I'll be rich. And then I'll be able to use that 10 million bucks and then buy a bunch of apartments or rent those out to people and then get even richer. Or start my own business is totally different, and then maybe I'll pay him back and give him a small percentage of the ownership of my new corporation, which I make huge, after I make his corporation huge, right? And then we could turn it over to other smart people who we don't give a percentage of, right? So then that kid, even if he's not really young, like 15 or 18 or something, even if he's 25 or 30 or something, right? He's going to have a good reason to be faithful to the business that you gave him 10% in, because the business's profits are his profits, right? So he's going to want to work hard to grow the business, right? And not just to collect a wage, but he's going to want to work overtime as much as possible because he wants the business to get as big as possible as soon as possible. Because if it does, he's making more money, you see? So it's not like he's working for free if he works overtime without a wage, right? He's just, making the business better so that finally, that 10% that he owns in the business is going to be worth a ton once he makes the business huge, right? So, these people who he brings into the bit, and he could do that with several people. The guy who starts a business could own 50% of the business and then hire on like 5 really high IQ people that each he gives, and each of those 5 people 10% of the business. So they together have 50% of the business, and the other guy owns 50% of the business. And they would work very hard, because the harder they work, the more the business succeeds, like I said. And the more the business succeeds, the more they increase their net worth. And even if they don't really like working for the founder of the business because of his low IQ or average IQ, which is way lower than theirs, not because he's an unkind guy, but just because he cannot understand their suggestions for how to advance the business because he isn't smart enough, if they can convince him to take a back seat in the company and let them run the business from then on, then he started the business, he would just become a silent partner, and then he'd still make a ton of money because he owns 50% of the business. But they would be entirely running the business after that and growing it huge, and then he'd be making more money too. Just like they were basically incentivized to work harder, he would be incentivized to work less because of his low IQ, but because he owns a percentage of the business, a huge percent, 50%, because he started it, this means that he's the one who's most incentivized to not work, and so therefore you don't have his low IQ ideas or decisions fucking up the company, and then you have all only the smart early 5 really smart kids who we hired to run the business. You have them running everything, and then the business advances much faster because the leadership is now much more competent, because the 50% owner guy stepped back to let the smart kids run the business, right? He would not even have to give them a greater share of the business to take over, because these young smart guys would want to take over because they know that once he lets them take over, they will be able to implement their ideas without any hindrances. They will therefore be able to much more quickly grow the business, and then they and their silent partner, former boss who started the business, all of them will be far richer once the business gets a lot bigger, because each share that they own will be worth a lot more on the open market. Or you could look at it like this. Even if they don't have an official corporation with an official dollar price share, like, or let's say Bitcoin price, because I'm talking about in the future under anarcho-capitalism. Even if they don't have an official corporation with an official Bitcoin price per share, they will still own a certain percentage of the profits of the business. And so even if they cannot sell their shares of the business because no one wants to buy their share, let's say, they still get their share of the monthly profits of the company. And if those profits go up, then those young, high IQ part owners of the business make more money every month, as does the technical owner of the business who started the business. He makes, and I don't mean technical in a sense of, like tech. I mean technical in the sense of like he's, in name only. Well, not name only, but like, yeah, he's a name only business guy. He's a silent partner. He's the owner of the business, but he doesn't have anything to do with it anymore. He's just raking in the bucks. He makes more money too when the company makes more money. So he could just sit back and collect his money, more and more money each month as the business grows, and he would be happy with that. And if you miss being more hands-on, that he wishes he had something to fill his time working on the business, but that he can't now because it's too advanced for him, then he could start a new business doing something completely different that does not compete with the first business, right? Right? Maybe the first business is something having to do with tech, and now the second business is, like something having to do with animals or something, right? And now he's a silent partner in that first business, right? And if that second business succeeds, then he could do the same thing. Hire young people who are smarter than himself, give them a share of the business, and allow them to help him grow the company. All of them making more and more money as the company gets bigger and bigger, making more and more sales each year. Both him and his partners, his young partners. But this rarely happens these days, this kind of thing, especially with poor people starting businesses and growing them, because you need to pay taxes, which makes it harder for businesses to avoid going out of business. You need to pay to adhere to regulations and get it approved that you adhere to the regulations. The price to rent for places is higher than it should be. You need to pay lawyers to make sure adhering to the super, super complicated law. You need to compete against huge businesses which are not paying any taxes because of the loopholes that they get their lobbyists to put into the laws that are passed, laws which are half the time literally written entirely by the corporate lobbyists themselves. So since you're competing against big businesses which don't have to pay taxes like you do, you can't succeed. The government does nothing but stifle business, kill freedom, kill success, make middle-class people poor, keep poor people poor, and make them even poorer, etc. Now, if you think having regulations be voluntary is a bad idea because if people were allowed to not adhere to regulations, a lot of them might put a fake certification in their window so that you think their business is certified as compliant with certain regulations and that business is actually not compliant. Well, to that objection, I will say that this would not be a problem because the certification company would have a list of all the companies that it has certified, and which companies failed their yearly or monthly inspection and still need to schedule another inspection so as to get approved so that they can once again be in good standing with the certification company or the regulation company. If the business says it's certified or adheres to regulations or whatever, then all you have to do is go onto the website and see if that company is on the list of, companies which actually are certified, certified as having being compliant with regulations, right? The voluntary regulations. So, if the company says that it's certified, you just go on the website and see if it actually is, If it's not on the list, then, it's not certified. The company would probably, a certification company, would probably also keep a list of all the names that are being searched, and therefore would keep them all on the list of not certified companies. And then it would maybe investigate those companies and, maybe even warn everybody that this company is fraudulent or whatever. And then that's good, right? And if you say, well, a business might be certified in some way or something, but how are they going to know that none of the various products being sold by that company are, like fakely certified? They have a certification sticker, like a vodka bottle, says it's certified as being, made in 100%, factories that are certified and that are, safe and clean and all that, right? And the bottle has that sticker, but how do you know it's not a fake sticker, right? Because, fraudulent people would create stickers that are exactly like the real stickers, right? So, companies, would then make the products, they would ally with the certification companies, where you check the certification, and then they would they would put like probably little barcodes or whatever, or numbers, or a Q code or whatever it's called. That little, cube. It's like a cube with like little black and white cubes inside it. Those which you scan with your smartphone and stuff. Like they would all have little things like that. Every product in every store. And if you want to know if it's a truly certified product, well, then you just, scan it with your phone. And then, you go to the certification website or the main company's website that sells that product. And then they'll have a list of all the codes. And it'll tell you whether that's a fake code or whether it's a real code. So you'll know whether the product's actually certified or not, right? Pretty easy. And businesses could probably also have investigators come in at a random time, like every 3 months. At some totally unexpected time during not just a day, but who knows even what month he would come in. So he comes in at some totally unexpected time, and then he like scans a few examples of every product in the store and checks that the QVC code. Is that what it's called? A QVC code? Whatever, Q code, whatever that code, or the barcode or the number, or whatever on the box, on the product, and he scans all those and makes sure none of them are fake certified. Saying they're certified but not actually. And he makes sure the certification thing. He goes on the certified website or the website of the product or whatever, checks every one of them. We all check out, okay, then the business is certified as selling only certified products, right? So then you know that, and then all you have to do is check if the business itself is certified as selling only certified products. Then you don't have to check every individual product to make sure that it's certified, because you just check the business. And if the business is on the list as being certified as only selling certified products, then you know that it's a business that only sells certified products. There should probably be like different kinds of certification, right? There'd be like certification for like restaurants, which like is making sure the thing that they sell, that is food, is actually like certified in terms of like the cleanliness of the kitchen and stuff, right? So they're actually inspecting the business itself, right? But as other stores that don't actually make anything like that, they just have a bunch of various products by various different companies and they just sell them. Those companies would be certified as whether they sell fakely certified products or whether all the products that in their store that claim to be certified are actually certified. And then the business would get certified if there were no fake products in there claiming to be certified that actually weren't, right? If all the products claiming to be certified in the business were certified, then that business which sells, packaged goods or whatever, that business would get certified because all the things in that business that were being sold were actually all certified individually. And the regulator would check that so that all the customers would only have to check whether the business itself was certified, right? Let's see here. Where was I? I kind of lost my I lost where I was in the script here. If it's not on, you go to the company website, see if it's on the list. If it's not on the list, and it's not certified, the name of the business is on the list. But if the name of the business is on the list, but it's not up to date, they haven't renewed their certification or they're behind on renewing it, then it would tell you that. And then, you just make your decision on whether you want to take that risk by using that business, which is a little behind on their certification or not, right? And also because maybe they're behind because they don't want to follow the regulations anymore because it's too expensive to do so. And now they're cutting corners and it will be dangerous. Or maybe they just didn't have the money, to do the certification, cost. Or maybe they just were really, really busy and they've just not gotten, maybe it's a death in the family. And so the business owner or whatever just couldn't get around to, recertifying his business or whatever. So then it's up to the individual customer whether he wants to take that risk or not, right? Also, certain products would be sold at approved places. Certain individual small businesses, whether in a shop or on the street corner or whatever, would be selling liquor or whatever else that has an approved sticker on it, so it seems to be safe and from a certain company. But like I said, some of those might have a label printed up and slapped on there, even though that drink or whatever had not been created by the company that says it's created by. But you'd know that if you're not buying that thing from an approved seller. You know that it might be fake. So then it's up to you, whether you're taking that risk or not. A business that sells only approved products, then you'd be Right. But you know that you're not buying that thing from an approved seller, a business that sells only approved products. You'd be taking a risk that the label might be fake and that it might actually not be the product that it says it is. It says it's name brand vodka, but it actually might be homemade vodka put into a brand name bottle. You'd be taking a risk, but you'd know that you'd be taking a risk. And it wouldn't even be a big deal because just because it might be lying about being a brand name doesn't mean the product is necessarily dangerous or bad. You know, most of the time, if you took the risk and got fooled and it was actually a non-name brand product stuck in a name brand bottle, then it would merely be a case of getting a product that tastes not as good, right? Big fucking deal, right? It's still safe, it just doesn't taste as good as it should, right? Because why would people be making dangerous products and selling them knowing that if they got somebody killed, this is anarcho-capitalism, there's no laws, that person will go after you, they'll fucking kill you right back, right? So everybody would be really worried about only selling safe products, you see? You know, it's the... Like I said, big fucking deal if a product doesn't taste as good because it's fake. You know, it's got a label on it that's not the actual product that it is. You know, it says it's, you know, Svedka brand vodka, but it's really just, you know, homemade vodka, right? And yeah, occasionally someone will take the risk and it will be dangerous and someone will die, but they knew that when they bought the product, that they knew when they bought the product that they were buying it from a business that, you know, sells uncertified things, and because the business itself is not certified, they knew they were buying something that could possibly be dangerous. You know, they took that risk and they paid the price. But that's life. You know, it's far better than having war, far better than having widespread poverty, far better than having utter tyranny in the name of quote-unquote safety and security. And because you would not be... And let me add that number one, not only... Like, if government is not... Like, as I'm proving in this video, just like... This video proves that government should not be in the realm of providing safety regulations and stuff like that, right? And if that's true, if government is not and should not be responsible for providing safety, well then why do we task the government with providing our safety from other governments? That's just as ridiculous because the government just terrorizes us, takes our rights away, you know, scares the shit out of us into thinking that, you know, we're going to be overrun and horrible things are going to happen to us without government. But, like, just because they fearmonger, just because they're such, you know, monsters who act like, you know, other people are so monstrous, the Russians are so monstrous, the Chinese are so monstrous, blah, blah, blah. And then if they're like, oh, no, it's the governments, it's not the people. You don't be biased against Russians or Chinese, it's the governments that are the scary thing that you should be scared of. Well, then why shouldn't we be scared of our own government? If governments are evil and we should be scared of them, why shouldn't we be scared of our own government? And governments take away our rights in the name of protecting us against governments, against other governments waging war against us, but our government is the one waging all the wars, right? This is insane, right? Like, we're giving up all our rights for absolutely nothing. The government is taking all our rights, and the governments are the ones who start all the wars in the first place. So it's like they start all the wars. Government always starts the wars, never the people. So if the whole world became anarcho-capitalist, there would be no war because 99% people don't want war. It's only the top 1% or the top 0.01% men who want war, who are total psychopaths, who don't mind war. And it's men need to wake up. Like, take the red pill and don't be disposable. Don't be disposable to women. Don't be disposable to war. Like, but you also have to realize that it's not sufficient that you not fight for the elites, because once we have robot soldiers and stuff, the elites will be waging war, but without any human beings to assist them. You see, that will be utterly psychotic and almost impossible to fight against, right? It'll be like Elysium. It'll be a living hell, an utter nightmare, right? So you really want an Elysium type of future? And I'm not talking about the place where all the nice people live on Elysium. I'm talking about the movie, like On Earth, where it's hell. And the rich all live all in this little satellite or whatever is up in space or in the air really high, you know, like, it's this really, really nice environment, right? Like they live these idyllic lives. Well, everyone else is living in hell on Earth, right? That's how it is. So it's ridiculous of us to think that we need government to protect us against other governments. That's like saying, you know, it's like that saying, fucking for virginity. It makes no fucking sense whatsoever at all, right? And it's like saying, no, I need this person to rape me so that this other person doesn't rape me first. That's what believing in government is like. It's like, I need this psychotic, monstrous entity that's going to steal from me and take away my rights and endlessly surveil me in total contravention of the whole basic human right to privacy. I need this government to do all these evil things to me so that this other evil government doesn't do it to me. That's fucking retarded. That is absolutely retarded. And because Back to the script, though, because you would not be paying income tax, property tax, or any other tax, this means that you would be far richer and would be able to afford the safe versions of products and would not often have to buy the products which might not be safe. Right? And if you did buy the unsafe versions of products, it would be because you know the seller and you know that he's a good guy, an honest, compassionate person who would never intentionally sell a product if he thought that it was dangerous. And he would afford you, and that would afford you a bit more protection, right? Like only buying from uncertified sellers who you know to be decent people, right? And also, like I said, I think I said this, the certified products would not be much more expensive than the uncertified products. So it's not like everybody, because of poverty, would be forced to buy unsafe products. No, that wouldn't be the case. Because like if your official Coca-Cola product is 5 times the price of an uncertified Coca-Cola product, which tastes exactly the same, using the exact same recipe, well then why would anyone buy that if, the reputable the seller of the uncertified cola is, totally reputable, tastes exactly the same, tons of people buy it, and no one ever dies, then why would you buy the Coca-Cola product that costs 5 times more? Why would you do that? No one would do that. So the only way to get people to buy the certified products is to not charge much more for them. Just to charge a little bit more. 5% more, 10% more, maybe 20 or 30% more, depending on the product. But basically, most people, virtually everyone, if not everyone, then almost everyone, would be able to afford, because there being no taxes and women being out of the workforce because of it being anarcho-capitalism and all the rest of it, this would mean that, it's going to be a case where basically everyone can afford to buy the safe versions of products. And if they can't afford it, they just save up for a slightly longer period of time and then buy it. Or they get a little loan and buy it if it's a really important thing. And they not only need it, but they need it to be a safe version. And they take out a little loan and then they pay it back real quick. Right? There's no fucking reason why anybody would be forced to use unsafe products against their will under anarcho-capitalism. Because like I said, the price discovery mechanism would make sure the certified products are not all that much more expensive than the uncertified products. So, and like I said, people would buy uncertified products all the time because they know the person who's selling it. Maybe he's a friend of a friend, or a friend of a friend of a friend. Or, or maybe you're related to him through your girlfriend or your wife or something. Or he's your father-in-law's, friend or cousin or whatever, right? So, people are going to know people who provide uncertified products and know if they're good people or not, if they're scamsters or not, right? And if they knew the guy or knew of him and knew he had a good reputation, then they would be willing to take the risk of eating his food, drinking his drinks, or whatever else he was selling. So this need for knowing the moral character of the people who sell unregulated products would also create more societal cohesion, would make people more interested in knowing the moral character of other people, etc. And this would incentivize morality in society, because if you had a bad reputation for selling products that are occasionally dangerous, then hardly anyone will buy from you. But if you have a reputation for being uncertified, not adhering to regulations officially, but nevertheless being safe, as well as being an honest, compassionate person, well then people will trust you and buy your products, visit your establishment, even though they know that you're not certified, because they trust you even though you're not certified. And they will tell their friends that you're trustworthy even though you're not certified, and then their friends will buy stuff from you as well, and then you'll get a lot of business. And the bigger your business gets, the more you will be able to get certified if you want to. And then that will perhaps increase your business, although it will drive prices up a little bit as well, or at least it will force you to survive off of smaller profit margins. But if you have like 10 locations of your business, you've already expanded, and they all have small profit margins, then you can still survive. Unlike trying to survive from one business with a small profit margin, or rather, one location of a business with a small profit margin. It's like Walmart. Walmart can sell things on a small margin because they sell so much. If they were smaller, they could never sell things at so low a price. So the bigger your business gets from your good reputation, the more you can certify and make less profit and then expand your business, because you get even more business. Business from people who avoided your establishment before because they didn't know anyone who could vouch for the safety of your product, because not everybody knows everyone, even tangentially. And so now, while you're having to survive off of smaller profit margins, you nonetheless make more money, because now more people buy from you because they see that you're certified. And they're the people who only shop at certified businesses, and they know, or businesses that they know personally, right? If they don't at least know the uncertified seller personally and it's not certified, if it's an uncertified person who they don't know, then they're not going to shop there. But once you're certified, they will start shopping with you. right? But of course, there'll always be a percentage of the population that avoids uncertified businesses. So no matter how how good their reputation for safety is, no matter how good the word on the grapevine is about that uncertified business, and once you're certified, you'll be able to attract business from that percentage of the population, that percentage of the population that never uses uncertified businesses no matter what. So you'll be able to get more business from them as well. Government mandating regulation adherence, certification, etc. infringes on freedom. It infringes on the freedom of the seller to sell what he wants and at the price he wants to sell it at, and it infringes on the freedom of the buyer to buy things that he wants. Maybe he likes taking risks and buying products that might be a bit dangerous or even very dangerous. That's part of the spice of life for him, and it also infringes on the buyer's ability to buy the product he wants at the price he wants. Letting people sell unsafe products is Darwinianism in action. The only reason the elites don't like it is because it creates prosperity and therefore makes us less enslaved to them, and they want us to be their slaves. So they oppose anything that increases the prosperity of the people. And the other reason the elites don't like it is because it is freedom. They hate the people having freedom. The people at the top are fucking power trippers. They are obsessed with power. They want to control everybody. They want to enslave everybody. They get off on it. They're psychopaths. And so, they hate us having freedom because they want to be able to control us. But being such fans of Darwinianism, the elites really should be in favor of the people having this total freedom to buy and sell whatever they want. If someone constantly throws caution to the wind and buys uncertified products and doesn't even bother only buying from those certified sellers that he knows are safe, in other words, he buys from all uncertified sellers, even those who might be very dangerous, because he doesn't even look into it at all, doesn't even check their safety or check their reputation at all, not even on the grapevine. If one day it backfires on him and he gets killed, well then isn't that just natural selection in action? Doesn't that improve the gene pool by getting rid of excessively careless individuals? And if he is maimed but not killed, and if he already has kids, then if it wasn't worth it, he will tell his kids that it wasn't worth it, and that they should be more careful than he was, and only buy from uncertified sellers that they know personally to be good people, to be reliable, caring people, or to buy from certified sellers. And then that reckless man's children will be more careful than he was, and that will increase the carefulness in society, and that will also increase the importance of everyone's reputation, because there will be more people in society concerned about reputation, and this will incentivize morality even more in society. And if that man who is maimed by not taking anything into account when buying products, if he tells his children that it was worth it, that buying uncertified products and not looking into them whether they're safe or not, that made his life more exciting and it was worth it. And even though he got maimed because of it after 30 or 40 years of doing that, and then he was able to save a lot of money that whole time and invest it, and that money he saved from buying uncertified products helped him get rich, right? Like whatever the reasons were, he tells them it was worth it, right? And then knowing all the while that it could kill him, using possibly dangerous products, and it made his life much more exciting and fun and enjoyable, and that knowledge made him much braver in other ways as well, such as being brave enough to use all his savings to start a new business in which he could have lost all his wealth, but which luckily worked out and which caused him to greatly increase his wealth. Well, then telling that to his kids would probably make those kids be more brave as well. And then you have more brave people in society, and that's a good thing. And perhaps that maimed father tells his kids that even though it eventually backfired on him, using possibly dangerous products, uncertified products, maybe he tells his kids that even though it backfired on him, he would not change anything. And that having total freedom, including the ability to sell dangerous products, is more important than forcing people to adhere to rules in the name of safety. This would make his children more appreciative of freedom, hearing that, because they would greatly be impressed by their father's words, that he was not angry at the guy who sold him the shoddily made product that crippled him. He may be a power tool or something, but that he is instead appreciative of the rich, vivid life that he has lived, and of the freedom that made that great life possible. A freedom which can only exist where there are no laws whatsoever, when absolutely everything is free, and where there's absolutely no restrictions, and everything is voluntarily entered into, nothing is involuntarily done. There's nothing forced on anyone. Everything is voluntarily adhered to. Everything is voluntarily engaged in. A freedom that only exists in anarcho-capitalism, where absolutely no one has their right to do anything that they want infringed on by anyone else. Not even infringed on in the slightest little bit. And then those kids would gain an even greater appreciation for the value of absolute unlimited freedom. And that father's increased happiness because of his absolute freedom during his life would also be a happiness that would influence others and would make life better for everyone else, just a little bit. But when you have that happening on a large scale, because of tens of millions of people or even hundreds of millions of people living those reckless but freedom-loving, life-loving lives, then that makes everyone else's life much better, because it's not just one person being positively being a positive effect on everyone he comes into contact with. It's everyone in the country knowing at least a few relatives or friends who are much happier due to the society having unlimited freedom and due to including the freedom to buy potentially dangerous products if you want to take that risk. And the happier those people are, the more they spread that happiness everywhere else as well, including back to the people who initially made them happier, the risk-loving people. And thus everyone is made far happier just because of those people who like to take risks and are able to do so because there being no government. They're happier being able to take risks, which makes the people around them happier, even if those people are not risk takers. And then those non-risk takers being happier makes the risk takers happier, and on and on and on. And then since everyone in society is happy, it's because it's, reciprocal happiness. It's a virtuous circle. This makes everybody in society happy because everybody in society around them is happy. You see? So then everybody's happy. When life is too safe, it loses its savor. Only if there is risk, danger, and such, is there some value to life. And that risk and danger should be the risk and danger that arises when there's absolute freedom, not the evil risk and danger that exists in a tyrannical society like the society that we Americans currently live in. Government acts like it wants to help people, but who has all this quote-unquote, but where has all this quote-unquote help gotten us? It's gotten us far poorer, far more wicked, far more cowardly, and far more miserable than ever before. Dangerous businesses would also be driven out of business because no one would use them because they'd get a bad reputation as being a business that is dangerous, such as a tattoo parlor that doesn't properly clean its needles. So there's no need for certification or compliance people making sure the regulations are being adhered to or any of that bullshit. At least it's not necessary that stuff be created and enforced by government. People will avoid dangerous businesses. There's no need for government to do that kind of stuff. So while under anarcho-capitalism there'd be lots of businesses not getting certified as safe, those businesses would be, when I say safe, I mean regulation compliant, right? Those businesses would be safety regulations. Those businesses would be making sure that their business is as safe as possible because they would know that the power of a bad reputation would destroy their business, so they would do everything they could to make their business safe. It just wouldn't be officially safe, mandated as safe, proven as safe. But that wouldn't mean that it would not be safe. In fact, because such businesses would be worried about getting a bad reputation, and that ruining their business, they would actually be the case because they'd be scared of losing business because of getting a bad reputation, because their product ever being unsafe, even accidentally. It would be the case that the businesses that were certified safe would probably often be just as dangerous or more dangerous than the businesses which are not certified, because uncertified businesses would be scared and would be doing their utmost to stay safe and keep a good reputation, whereas the certified businesses would feel comfortable and would therefore become a bit lax, a bit lazy about adhering to regulations, at least until inspection time comes around again. So actually businesses without the official a seal of approval saying that they're safe would often be safer than businesses with the official seal of approval. And people would know that, and so they would only worry about unapproved businesses that they were not familiar with, that they didn't know the reputation of. So that knowledge that people would have about how businesses unapproved as safe are often safer than businesses which are approved as safe, this knowledge that the public would have about that fact would make it so that they would see little difference between shopping at certified businesses that they're familiar with and the certified businesses. So then people would just usually shop at the uncertified businesses as long as they had a good reputation and they kind of knew the reputation of the guy who ran it and that he's a good guy and that the product is safe. Right? And then that would make certification almost just a bonus, an unnecessary bonus. And that would make it so that most people didn't bother to get certified anyway. Now maybe you're thinking I'm naive, that multinational corporations are evil, and that they would not restrain themselves if there were no government, but if that's what you're thinking, then you're mistaken. The corporations already have control of the government. Sure, there are laws on the books, but are those laws enforced against multinational corporations? No. Did Lloyd Blankfein or Jamie Dimon get prosecuted for treason? No. Do the multinational corporations, which poison the environment, knowing it would cause cancer and kill large numbers of people? Did those CEOs or other high-level employees get prosecuted for murder? No. Sure, maybe they got sued and had to pay back millions or tens of millions of dollars in damages, but no one was prosecuted for murder. They should have been prosecuted for murder, but they weren't. And that's because the government is controlled, at least partially, by the multinational corporations. So the government actually shields the multinational corporations. The government does this just by existing, and by failing to prosecute the people in the corporation who commit not just civilly culpable actions, but criminally culpable actions like widespread murder. The people have turned the power to hold these corporations over to the government. And so there's no justice because the government does not do its job of restraining the multinational corporations. The reason the corporations act as evilly as they act is because they have government shielding them. the corporations know that not only will the US government not prosecute them for murder or treason, they furthermore know that the common people of the 99% know that the government will prosecute them if they, the common people, try to kill anyone in the corporation in response to the evil that the corporations have done and are continuing to do, right? So we have turned our power to hold the corporations responsible over to the government, and the government is not doing its job. And yet the government is restraining us from restraining the corporations by means of violence, of murder, right? Because if there were no government, we absolutely would burn down the headquarters of multinational corporations, kill their CEOs, kill their CTOs, kill their CFOs, etc. We'd absolutely do that. But the government is not only not prosecuting the corporations, it's restraining us from holding the corporations responsible by means of murder and arson and stuff, right? So government is actually a shield for the corporations. So under anarcho-capitalism, the corporations would have no shield. So the corporations would be absolutely terrified of getting on the bad side of the people, because the people have the numbers, and the people would all be armed to the teeth under anarcho-capitalism, and so all the corporations would be absolutely terrified of doing anything bad and invoking the wrath of the people against them, because there'd be no government to protect the corporations, you see? So all we need to do is bring in anarcho-capitalism, and the corporations automatically will be brought under control. Especially once the people arm themselves to the teeth. You know, with grenades, rocket launchers, and tanks, and automatic weapons, and all the rest of it, you see? Like a country with 100 million people with automatic weapons and claymores and grenades and rocket launchers and all the rest of that. 100 million people in a country with that kind of weaponry, no corporation stands a chance. So the corporations would be terrified. They would absolutely act extremely ethically, extremely morally, because they would be terrified of what would happen to them if they didn't. And yeah, in the beginning they might act evilly, but then once the people burned down a few headquarters and murdered a few CFOs and CTOs and CEOs and presidents and chairmen, well, then the corporations get the idea, and then they start acting very, very differently. The reason the corporations act as evilly as they do, because they have the government shielding them. Corporations know that not only will the U.S. government not prosecute them for murder, oh yeah, I read that part already. Alright, they'll stop us from holding the corporations accountable. But under anarcho-capitalism, there's no government, and it's very clear to everyone that if a corporation is behaving badly, whether that's, mass theft, mass murder, or whatever else the corporation is doing that's evil, the 99% will know that it is up to them to hold the corporation accountable, and the people will hold it accountable. If the government poisons a town, and thereby gives hundreds of people cancer, then a shitload of people, not just from that town, will burn down the corporation's headquarters or shoot down planes owned by that corporation, or will attack any other corporation that works with that evil corporation. The people will be armed to the teeth under anarcho-capitalism. That, along with there being no cops and no military, will enable them to hold the corporations accountable, and this ability and willingness of the people to hold corporations accountable will scare the shit out of the corporations and will force the corporations to behave properly. And since life in an anarcho-capitalist society will be so safe and so prosperous and so cushy, this means that guys in their mid-teens to late 20s, and maybe even a fair amount of guys in their 30s, and a small percentage of guys in their 40s, will not just be willing to use violence against anyone who's acting badly, whether that's an individual person or a multinational corporation. These guys will want to use violence, right? Because violence is in our DNA. And we had a way to exercise that desire to use violence in the past. We'd run down and spear a bison or kill a tiger or something. All right, we could use our violence, our desire for violence in this harmless way, right? That helps the tribe. But now, especially in the future under anarcho-capitalism, everything will be so prosperous, safe, and cushy. No war, fast technological development, no taxes. Everybody's living such a good life that all the men will just be brimming to use their desire to be violent. But they won't have any way to exercise that violence except to use it against corporations that act evilly. So the men of the country in their 40s and on down, or at least in their 20s on down, would just be itching. Like the 13-year-old, let's say the 13 to 28-year-old guys, maybe the 13 to 35-year-old guys, let's say 13 to 32-year-old guys will just be absolutely itching to find a corporation that's acting evilly so that they can all amass and use violence against it, right? Now people will be able to, box and do other kind of violent exercises to, keep their instinct under control in a healthy way, but still, people have a sort of warlike instinct, men do. And so, when corporations act evilly, the men they will love to have that opportunity to act out those instincts and kill the evil people in that corporation, right? And these guys want to exercise those instincts, like I said. But because of these guys' moral upbringing, and because of societal unacceptableness of exercising those violent instincts in an unvirtuous, immoral way, these guys will stay up on what the corporations are doing, right? They'll just be, keeping very close track of what the corporations are doing, hoping so that the corporation, if the corporation does any evil, they'll have an excuse to go on a rampage against those evil multinational corporations. And since those multinational corporations will have deserved it, this will mean that everyone in society will approve of what these 16 to 32-year-old guys did, burning down the headquarters of the company and or killing the CEO and or the CFO and or the CTO, etc. of the company. As long as the people don't have to fear cops or military or anything like that, and as long as the people are heavily armed with claymores and automatic weapons and grenades and rocket launchers and tanks and such, the people will absolutely deal out violence and put themselves in harm's way in order to attack an evil multinational corporation for its evil deeds which got large numbers of people killed or poisoned or otherwise injured, or deeds which enslave large numbers of people. People now don't fight because they would have to first contend with the government, and the government is far better armed and far better funded than a multinational corporation would be or can be. Right? But especially since it uses fiat currency to endlessly fund itself. But under anarcho-capitalism, there would only be sound money, no fiat currency, right? But if we destroy government, and there'd be many kinds of sound money, gold, silver, platinum, palladium, rhodium, aggregate cryptocurrencies, which aggregate the value of, a precious metal or a forest of timber or whatever, there'd be all kinds of sound monies, mainly in crypto form. So that's important to understand. It's not like I'm saying we're going to force one sound money on everybody. There's going to be, open market, and everybody's going to get to use whatever sound money that they want to use that, is actually viable because of other people using it. Because if no one accepts your sound money, you can't really use it as sound money, right? But there will be tons and tons of people accepting tons and tons of different sound monies, and I'm sure there will arise companies that act as the intermediaries. So let's say I have a rhodium-based sound money, but you only use, Bitcoin and Monero and silver and gold-based cryptocurrencies, or silver and gold. But I only use a rhodium-based cryptocurrency, right? A cryptocurrency backed up by rhodium, right? Well, then I could, also have this, an app on my phone that is to this business. You also have an app on your phone to that same business, and this same business exchanges sound monies. Right? Like if I have a rhodium-based sound money, and you have and you only take these top the top 6 sound monies, and I use this rare sound money over here. Well, then the company that we both have the app for on our phone, I can give them my rhodium-based sound money, and they will give me the value of that in Bitcoin or whatever, and then they will send that Bitcoin or whatever to the guy who I'm buying the thing from. So even people with conflicting sound monies that don't interact because they don't use the same sound money, even those people will be able to interact and buy and sell things from each other in the future. So that's how that will be. Like I was saying, though, the government funds itself with sound money. I mean, with fiat currency, which means it's funded well because it steals endlessly from the people by money printing. But, if we destroy the government, then it'll be very easy to hold multinational corporations accountable for their behavior and keep those companies in line with morality, enforced with violence. And sure, the corporations would have their own security forces, their own little or maybe not so little armies, but when the word got out that the corporation had something evil, that had done something evil, then those soldiers would be far less willing to repel attacks from the people, right? Like, you're going to want to defend your corporation if, you're going to risk your life and be a soldier for this corporation, security force for this corporation, but not if the corporation did something evil. You hear that the corporation you're working for and who you're defending against the wrath of the people, you hear this corporation did something evil, you're probably going to quit, right? Especially since only men will be working, there'll be tons and tons of jobs. You'll easily be able to get a job with some other company, either as a security force or doing anything else, right? And so there's really no reason why they would work for a security force if that corporation did something evil, right? So then it wouldn't be too hard to fight those security forces because they'd be small, number one. Number two, they wouldn't have moral conviction like the people would. Plus, it'd just be like, you could overwhelm them, right? And the people, like I said, the people would be far more numerous and could therefore still take down the corporation despite the corporation's huge army, which it might have. And even if the actions of the people did not destroy the corporation, the people's violent actions toward the corporation would incentivize the corporation to stop being evil in the future, even if it didn't destroy the corporation. The corporation would get sick of having its headquarters burned down and of having to be rebuilt, or the company having to spend money on buying a new headquarters. The corporation would get sick of having its executives burned to death with napalm, or having their summer home burned down when they're not living in it, or being assassinated from, far away with a sniper rifle. Right? The corporation would get really, really sick of having to replace its CEOs and CTOs and CFOs and its headquarters and all the rest of it, right? So the corporation, just in its own selfishness, would not want to do evil anymore, because the people would make it just too annoying to the corporation to do evil, right? And not only that, but the evil corporation would find it harder and harder to hire new replacement employees, because no one would want to work for them because of a fear of getting killed. And all the other corporations would start to ostracize that corporation and anyone who works for that corporation. Other corporations would stop hiring people who work at the corporation that did something evil. They would do this because they would not want to get the wrath of the people because of hiring the people who worked at the evil corporation. Let's say Corporation X does something really, really evil, and then some employees decide to, leave and go to Corporation Y. Corporation Y is going to be like, fuck that, we're not hiring you. We don't want to start getting backlash because everybody remembers that you used to work for Corporation X and you're working for us now. We don't want to start getting our headquarters burned down, our CFOs and CTOs and CEOs killed. Fuck you. Anybody who works at Corporation X or has ever worked at Corporation X, we're not hiring them. Right? And then no one's going to want to work for Corporation X. And then, Corporation X can't get any good employees, and then it crashes and burns because it can't compete with the other corporations because it can't hire top talent because nobody wants to get killed and nobody wants to become unemployable by having worked for Corporation X. You see? So that's how it could go, right? I think that very well would happen. That very well might happen if we get anarcho-capitalism. I think it's likely this would be a scenario. Because, all the aggression that you see in society, like there's not as much, but what little you do see could easily be channeled toward government instead. You know what I mean? And so it's like, people think that men have no balls because they don't want to overthrow the government, but if the government were already gone, I don't think a lot of these men would have a problem going up against a multinational corporation, because I think a lot of the reason that people don't want to go up against the government these days is because they feel they're sure to lose. But if we had anarcho-capitalism, everyone are armed to the teeth, everyone would have a really good chance of winning against a corporation. And what man would not want to, take down a corporation if the corporation were evil, if there stood a very good chance that he would be able to take down that evil corporation, right? I think men would be taking down corporations all the time under anarcho-capitalism, because they'd have a way better chance of succeeding. So, I think that needs to be understood as well. Like I said, the people would not want to work for the corporation, and they wouldn't want to, and the other corporations would not want to accidentally hire any evil people who might misbehave and bring down the wrath of the people in their corporation as well. And then employees of the evil corporation who are innocent would get very angry at their own company for doing evil deeds, because obviously even evil corporations employ a lot of good people, right? Maybe not at top levels, but throughout all their employees, there's quite a few good ones, right? Maybe even the majority of the people who work for them are good, and it's only a few key people at the top are evil, right? So, this being the case, the good people who work for Corporation X would get very angry at their own company for doing these evil deeds that make it so that they can no longer get a job with any other corporation. And then the employees, would force Company X to start improving. And maybe the employees will start killing their own supervisors if their supervisors are forcing them to do immoral things. And maybe they'd even kill the CEO, the CTO, the CFO, the president, the chairman, etc., and take control of the company themselves. Like a government coup. Like Hitler did in Germany. Maybe they'll do that with the corporation and then totally revamp the company and make it a moral company. And then give the public a say in what the company does going forward, so that the company is no longer able to act evilly, and so that the company can no longer be wholly blamed by the public when the corporation misbehaves, because the people have a say in what the corporation does. And of course, maybe part ownership would come with part, and of course, with part ownership of the company would maybe come part ownership of the profits of the company, and thus the people would benefit financially for keeping an eye on what the company is doing. Although then that maybe creates an evil incentive, like, if they can profit by doing something evil, then they would approve of the company doing something evil. So you got to be aware of that danger. And the replacement CEOs, CFOs, CTOs, presidents, etc. will not want to get lynched or burned alive, and so they will force the company to act more virtuously, even if there's no public say in how the company acts, other than the people using violence when the company misbehaves. And if the company has to take a loss in order to not do anything evil and is being outcompeted by other companies, then the company will take its complaint directly to the people or to a journalist who will bring the information to the people. And the company will point out that other companies are doing evil things that are preventing it from doing the right thing without taking a loss. And then people will stop buying products from those other companies. Or those other companies will change their behavior, or the people will use violence against those other companies. And because of there being no CIA or other government subversion of journalism, there would be a lot more real journalism under anarcho-capitalism. And there being real journalism would mean that when a company misbehaved, everyone would learn about it, if only because of the whistleblowing that would regularly be done by employees of the evil company, because they would not be afraid of losing their job because of it being very easy to find a new job, because of almost all women being wives and mothers and hardly any women being in the workforce. And therefore, there not only being far more jobs screaming out for men to take the job, but also men would get paid way more and would have more savings and would not be afraid of being unemployed for a while during the time that he's looking for a new job. Yes, corporations are evil, and yes, they would try to enslave us under anarcho-capitalism, but we would have the real journalism, the freedom, the weapons, etc. to hold the corporations in check. The problem, even with government, is not the government, even though government is morally and intellectually illegitimate at all times. The government, and always has been, and therefore we should never tolerate government, ever. The problem with government today is our delusional belief in it. That is the core problem. It's our delusional belief that government has a moral right to rule, or that it is necessary even though it might be evil. And these two beliefs are delusions. This whole thing, violence and corporations and sales and prices and all of this, it's all a self-regulating mechanism. Prices rise as high as they can until the company starts losing sales, market share. And then prices are lowered as much as necessary in order to get people buying the product again. And that is how a price is discovered. Similarly, corporations act as evilly as they can get away with until they get backlash from the public, and then they stop acting that evilly. They tone it down to a level that the public accepts. So if the public accepts no evil behavior from government or multinational corporations, then those entities will be as virtuous as they need to be. But if the public is apathetic and has low moral standards, or if the public is cowardly, then the corporations and the government can both get away with huge amounts of horrifically evil behavior. And you may ask why we should get rid of the government, but not the corporations. Well, the corporations actually do useful things. The government does not. Even though corporations are also evil, they at least do some useful, necessary stuff. That is, make products that are useful and desired by lots of people, whether it's a can of Coca-Cola, or a computer, or a chemical used for staining wood. It doesn't matter. It's useful stuff, or stuff that people want, even if it's not a necessary product. But we are at the end point now, and this must be understood. Something more akin to communism or socialism without any hierarchy. This may soon be possible if we, the 99%, are in charge when genetic engineering arises. If we genetically engineer everyone to have a high IQ, a great memory, high aggression in guys, sexual faithfulness in women, high creativity in everyone, high morality in everyone, no one being allowed to have the genes for psychopathy, etc., then this will mean that it might be possible to have a sort of Marxist utopia without any government, without any multinational corporations, etc. Things will still be created, but without any authority structures, without any authority hierarchies. Or at least if there are authority hierarchies, they will be purely voluntary. They will not be able to force their will on anyone. If everyone has a roughly equal IQ, such as everyone having a 180 IQ, almost a 200 IQ, this will mean that there is no ability for anyone to tyrannically rule anyone else, because no one will have much of an IQ advantage, and thus won't be able to run circles around anyone else. Let's say the smartest person in society has like a 187 IQ, and the dumbest person in society is like a 175 IQ. That's not much difference. That's a very small percentage of difference. You see, so then the smartest people will have very little advantage over the dumbest people, right? And then no one will be able to run circles around anyone else intellectually, and thus, theft will be difficult or impossible, tyranny will be difficult or impossible, hierarchy will be difficult or impossible to create or sustain, etc. Either we take back power before genetic engineering of human beings comes about, or we are screwed, and slavery and war and horror of all kinds will continue perhaps for centuries, maybe for millennia. And that's assuming our species survives, which is entirely unsure. Now, I think extinction is much more likely if we don't take back power very soon. Now, some people may say that we need government to keep drugs illegal. Well, number one, CIA traffics hard drugs, but even if you don't believe that, then I object on free market grounds. Government is not necessary because when you let drugs be legal, even hardcore drugs like heroin and cocaine, then the result is that the drugs are made and sold by reputable companies when these drugs are legal. You will never have to buy cocaine or heroin that is not 100% pure, and thus there will be nobody dying from contaminated drugs, there will be no one dying from an accidental overdose, everyone will easily and comfortably manage their habit if they are a drug addict, and the drugs can cure people. And the drugs which can cure people, such as ibogaine, being an amazingly effective heroin cure, with a rate of like 91% of curing heroin addicts, those drugs, which are illegal now, will be legal too under anarcho-capitalism. So when people want to break their heroin addiction, they'll be able to. Maybe not everyone who tries it, but the vast majority of heroin addicts will be able to break their addiction by using ibogaine. And not as like methadone, like a continued thing. It's a psychedelic. You try it once and you're cured. For real. It's amazing. And yet ibogaine is illegal. Why? Because the government gets money from heroin, from trafficking it, and so the government wants people addicted to heroin. Is there any greater proof that the U.S. government is trafficking drugs than the fact that ibogaine, an incredible cure for heroin addiction, is not only illegal but is not allowed to be used to treat heroin addiction in the U.S.? Even if the U.S. government wanted to keep ibogaine illegal, they should at the very least make it legal for doctors to use in order to cure heroin addiction. And also, I'm sure drugs that would help cure cocaine addiction would be discovered or created under anarcho-capitalism, and those drugs would also be legal, because everything is legal under anarcho-capitalism. And drug addiction would not be a problem if it's something harmless like marijuana, and psychedelics like shrooms, ayahuasca, peyote, etc., which are not addictive, and we already have alcohol legal, so things under anarcho-capitalism would be no worse than they already are regarding alcohol, other than drunk driving. But, those people would quickly get taken out of the gene pool under anarcho-capitalism, that is, drunk drivers, because, anybody who kills somebody drunk driving, or even maims anybody, permanently injures someone by drunk driving and crashing into them, like that victim's family is going to murder the drunk driver. And even if the victim was not killed, they're going to murder the drunk driver, and everybody around them, other than maybe the family of the drunk driver, is going to view it as a societal service, a public service, a good thing that they killed him, because, you can't have people doing drunk driving. That's ridiculous. And so hardly anybody will drive drunk except for alcoholics, and they will quickly get killed once they have an accident, because everyone will view it as a public service to kill them. And that would lower the prevalence for the genes of alcoholism, which would also be a good thing. Plus, the technological development speed would be so fast under anarcho-capitalism that we would soon be riding around in driverless cars, and thus everyone would be able to drink alcohol while in a car without any problem, and use any other drugs in a car without any problem. And everyone would be richer, and thus it would be much cheaper to get an Uber, and thus far fewer people would drink and drive, no matter how bad of an alcoholic they were, because they could all afford an Uber. And yet another reason would be that needles would be available to buy, and they would be cheap. So degenerate drug addicts would not have to share needles, thus lowering the amount of diseases that are spread by needle sharing. This would guarantee that when those people finally got sober, whether 5 years later or 25 years later, those people would be much more efficient workers, because they would be disease-free instead of being afflicted with a disease from sharing needles. And if we had anarcho-capitalism, another advantage of having no laws against any drugs would be the people who wanted to use heroin could use powdered heroin. You don't hear about it all that often, but you can absolutely buy and snort heroin as if it were cocaine, instead of shoot the heroin into your arm. And it's less addictive when you snort it. So if heroin were legal, there'd probably be a lot more people snorting it, especially since it would be more socially accepted to snort it, and since it would not create track marks to snort it, and since the addicts would have more money, and because of no taxes and because of women being out of the workforce, and would thus be able to afford to buy more heroin, which is necessary when you snort it because of it being a less efficient delivery method. So there would be fewer needle heroin addicts and more snorting heroin addicts, and that would be a good thing as well. So things would actually be much better under anarcho-capitalism when it comes to drug abuse. So drugs are no reason to continue to have a government. And plus, the war on drugs has been a complete, absolute, astronomically expensive, utter fiasco failure. It's been a total failure, and it's been a super, super expensive failure as well. Assuming they were even trying to really win the war on drugs in the first place, which they aren't because CIA is trafficking drugs. But even if they had been trying and CIA is not trafficking drugs, they are, but even if they weren't, even if I'm wrong and CIA is not trafficking drugs, it's still a case of the war on drugs being super, super expensive and super, super ineffective, right? The war has been a complete failure. We have lost that war, and yet we keep fighting it. Why? Civil asset forfeiture. That's one of the reasons. It gives the cops an excuse to confiscate money and property and cars and all kinds of things, right? This literal theft. And the Constitution, the fucking, tyrannical, utterly unconstitutional, treasonous Supreme Court has declared that civil asset forfeiture is constitutional, even though it blatantly is not. Even according to past Supreme Court precedent, it's not legal. So it's totally insane. And not just that, but it's like when you make drugs illegal, you create this forbidden aura of excitement and mystery around drugs and stuff, and then people do them because it's exciting and forbidden and stuff, right? But like if it's all just legal, then people will be like, why would you want to get addicted to heroin or coke? Why would you want to do that? There's no mystery. There's no allure. It's retarded. It's just expensive. It's going to make you feel good for a little while and then feel like absolute crap after that. You're going to feel like a truck ran over you. A lot of people feel that way after they use cocaine. Whether I can't remember if it's like a few hours later or the next morning, they feel like crap, right? Just like people who use LSD feel like they got ran over by a truck the next morning. Why would you want to feel that way? Plus, like heroin and cocaine are addictive. Who would do that, right? Like, if anything, the drug addiction rate would go down under anarcho-capitalism because there'd be nothing appealing about using drugs, and all of society would see how utterly stupid it is. And so everyone would look down on those who use drugs, and so no one would want to use drugs. And the people who did would be able to use them much more safely. And there'd be no civil asset forfeiture and all the rest of it, right? So things would be infinitely better if we got rid of the laws against drugs, if we just did that one thing. And sure, there'd still be some bad things that exist under anarcho-capitalism, but all those bad things that would exist under anarcho-capitalism are things that already exist today. So it'd be no worse than it already is, and would, in fact, in many ways, anarcho-capitalism would be much better, right? So those same bad things that still exist under anarcho-capitalism would be far less destructive. The free market would help ameliorate the problems and make those intractable problems far less destructive. Nothing would be worse under anarcho-capitalism, and most things would be way, way, way better. And maybe you might even say everything would be at least a little better. And not just a little better on the whole would everything be, but everything on the whole would be unimaginably better. I'll bet the Germans in Weimar Germany could not have imagined how much better things could get if the right leader took power and made the country's leadership honest again. But it happened. He had the balls to take power, and he took power on a second attempt, and then Germany's standard of living went from being the worst in all of Europe to being horrific, utterly horrific, to being unimaginably better. It went from being absolute hellhole of degeneracy and poverty to the country with the highest standard of living in Europe. And that happened in a time span of just a few years. In less than a decade, things had completely turned around. It could happen again. All we need to do is get the courage to overthrow the government one way or another, and then allow anarcho-capitalism to arise in the government's place, and use our strength to refuse to let any new government arise and take the place of the old government. And remember, under anarcho-capitalism, you can have everything you want. Everything we have now under anarcho-capitalism. The only difference is that it's never forced on anyone. If some of the people under anarcho-capitalism want a government with a fiat currency and a large military, go for it. But the taxes will be voluntary, and the government won't be able to enforce its laws on anyone who has not volunteered to be under that government's rules. The difference between today's government and all the governments of the past, and, on the other hand, anarcho-capitalism, is that anarcho-capitalism is voluntary. Anything done under anarcho-capitalism is voluntary instead of forced on people. And voluntarily choosing to join a group means that when you're part of that group, you have obligations, but you also have privileges, rights, protections, advantages, etc. But the difference under anarcho-capitalism is that you're not forced to join a group. Unlike today, when everyone is forced to be a citizen just because we were born here. And if we want to renounce our citizenship, there's no free anarcho-capitalist area to go live in instead. So it's a choice between one tyrannical non-voluntary government and another tyrannical non-voluntary government. That's how it is today. But under anarcho-capitalism, you won't have to join anything. Under anarcho-capitalism, there can and probably will be things similar to governments. There will be corporations, there will be charities, there will be everything that there is today, and yet there will be total freedom for new business owners, drug users, religious people, feminists, MGTOWs, blacks, and people of other races who don't want to live with whites, etc. Everyone gets what they want under anarcho-capitalism, and no one has anything forced on them against their will under anarcho-capitalism, right? All we have to do to get rid of almost all problems in society is to get rid of government. When there's no government, then no one can get away with their evil deeds, and then that scares people into behaving morally. Morality comes from freedom, and freedom comes from morality as well, such as having the balls to overthrow the government when it becomes tyrannical. Courage is an aspect of morality. You can't be truly moral unless you have at least a little bit of courage. But courage and freedom are the source of all good things, even sound money. You can have a government and have sound money, but the government will always get rid of sound money eventually, right? The government will always try to institute a fiat currency system and get rid of sound money because sound money naturally limits government. So bringing back sound money is no cure for the problem because government will just abolish or undermine or distort sound money again, one way or another. But getting rid of government automatically institutes sound money because when people are free to do so, no one will save in fiat currency if they could instead save in the form of sound money instead. And if there's personal fiat currencies, those will be viewed as being more like a form of personal stock. And therefore, using a specific person's fiat currency will only be done when that person is reliable and the fiat currency reliably gains value due to it being linked to the earning power of the person who issues that fiat currency, thus making all fiat currencies under anarcho-capitalism, that is personal fiat currencies, that would make them all fiat currencies not like any of today's fiat currencies. If a fiat currency gains in value, then it's more like sound money and will be used by people, and that will be fine. The problem is theft, inflation, forced use of fiat currency, etc. And that won't happen under anarcho-capitalism because everyone will choose to use whichever currency they want, such as some people using gold, some people using Bitcoin, some people using Monero, some people using more obscure cryptocurrencies, etc. And that will be like a form of voting. But the losers will not be banned. They would just be edged out of popularity, but they will still continue to be used by people. And thus, when they have already lost most of the pie to the one cryptocurrency which has won the competition, their value will stabilize at a much lower level. Those other cryptocurrencies will. The problem is not with even so much with the problem isn't even so much with fiat currency losing value as it is with fiat currency perpetually losing value. You see, like a fiat currency issued by a person, like I make the Redshift. Let's under anarcho-capitalism, I start issuing the Redshift coin, right? And I can print as much of it as I want because it's a personal fiat currency, right? But when people use it, I don't want them to stop using it, so I limit how much I issue. And when I issue more of it, it's more of like an investment in myself. I temporarily steal value from all the other like Redshift coins out there, and then I use those extra Redshift coins that I created for myself to, fund some business venture that I'm doing. And because, I'm a smart, successful person, then this means that, like, hypothetically, I'm not saying I'm successful or anything. I'm just saying, like, in the future, if I were, like, really successful, and I'm this theoretical, like, person who is so successful that, like, people trust my fiat currency, well, then I issue this fiat currency, and I create a bunch of new Redshift coins, and I steal the value from everybody else's Redshift coins temporarily. But I do this so that I can make an investment in this new business that I'm starting. And then because I'm really smart and successful, or smart and therefore guaranteed to be successful most of the time on average, this new business is successful and makes a bunch of money, and then therefore I can make a bunch of money, and then I use the profits from that new business, which was funded with the new Redshift coins that I created that thereby stole the value of everybody else's Redshift coins. And then I therefore use the profits from the business, and I either like use it to I destroy some of my own Redshift coins so as to give back the value of everybody else's Redshift coins, or I somehow, or maybe I print up new Redshift coins and give them back out to everybody else who has Redshift coins, so that now the percentage of Redshift coins that I own is the same percentage that I had before because I just printed up new Redshift coins and then gave everybody else more Redshift coins, so now the relationship between them and me and how many coins we have is the same as before, so therefore I'm giving back the value to them that I stole when I printed up more of the Redshift coins to fund the initial business, and I fund that all with the profits from the business later on to pay them back. You see, so you could do that and have fiat currencies which actually rise in value or stay at the same value. But personal fiat currencies which rise in value like that would only rise in value because the person who is issuing that fiat currency is very responsible and very intelligent and very successful and very honorable. You see, so personal fiat currencies would be quite rare, but they could exist and they could be successful, right? But then they're less like fiat currencies and they're kind of more like sound money at that point. So, but those kind of currencies, whether, personal fiat currencies or whether they're other sound money cryptocurrencies like Litecoin or Bitcoin Dark or whatever, like after one cryptocurrency wins the whole battle of being the main cryptocurrency that everybody uses, all the other cryptocurrencies will still be able to be used. No one will stop them from using them. It's just they will all settle at a low level, right? And then See, it's the problem. They'll lose value, but only as long as it takes for the other cryptocurrency, the main one, that became the dominant one that everybody uses for the most part. That they'd lose value, but then after that, they wouldn't just keep losing value like the dollar. At that point, they'd stabilize at a low level. You see, maybe they were like 10% of the cryptocurrency market, right? But then now, like 10 years later, they're down to like 0.5% of the cryptocurrency market. But then they don't just keep shrinking after that. They just kind of stay at a low level. All these other ancillary, these all secondary, tertiary cryptocurrencies, they all stay at a very low market share value. But after that, they don't really lose much market share value. Or if they do, they only lose it to each other. A few of them might die, and then the other secondary ones gain in market share, but only not because they're grabbing market share from the main cryptocurrency, which won the battle and is the one that 98% of people use, but because of them taking market share from the other small cryptocurrencies that died, right? Like I said, the problem isn't even with so much with fiat currency losing value as it is with fiat currency perpetually losing value. Because like I said, a personal fiat currency could temporarily lose value to the other holders of it, but not the issuer of it, but to the holders of it. But then, it would gain the power back if that person used that extra money that he got from issuing more copies of it. If he used that responsibly and gained more wealth with it, then he could pay everybody back. So the problem isn't with fiat currency losing value. The problem with fiat currencies like the dollar and the ruble and the yen and all the rest of them, and the yuan, the problem with those is that they're perpetually losing value. They're always losing more and more and more value. They never stabilize. Virtually everyone under anarcho-capitalism will use sound money of one kind or another, and all the cryptocurrencies and even gold will be evolving, and thus while the inferior coins, the inferior forms of money will be winnowed and will die, like the inferior cryptocurrency coins, there will probably continue to exist quite a few very reliable and very powerful and very anonymous cryptocurrencies that lots of people use, assuming none of them win the competition for the role of sole cryptocurrency that most people use. But anyway, like I said, it's far more important to get rid of government and allow anarcho-capitalism to arise than it is to institute sound money. Instituting sound money is only useful for saving wealth and for edging government out, for waging war on government, but actually the prime goal should be to get rid of government, because getting rid of government automatically gets rid of all other problems, including the problem of fiat currency. This has been Redshift, Peace Trucks for Plutocrats.